going to go ahead. Well, I will use this because then everybody can really hear. Good afternoon. I'm Joella Hoy, and I represent Kansas House District 17, just across the street. And my normal crew of folks is all out either on the statewide campaign trail or traveling for classes, conferences, things like that. So if anyone else joins us, they'll be able to catch up once they get here. But we like to keep at least someone keeping these going every month so that we stay in the routine and also just hear what's on everybody's mind and answer questions. I've realized hearing from getting a number of constituent emails in the last couple of weeks that since when we adjourned so early that it's a really big gap between the end of April and when January starts. So I think it's good to have this connection while in the interim so that we don't fall behind or miss out on any of the issues. I've had some people just needed help with a couple of things. So glad to keep this access if anybody does have anything in the meantime. The World Cup has started, and I think it's really exciting. I got to go to a little World Cup Eve event for some of the area legislators at Union Station. The Greater Casey Chamber had us all out there, and it was fun to hear from them after all the work they've done to get everything organized. And it seems like we've been hearing about this for the last 2 years, and here it is. And the buses going back and forth are really exciting. So it is fun, and it does feel like a different vibe around here right now. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it all ends up. So far, so good, and just a really great thing for our community on both sides of the state line. Anyone have anything about World Cup or anything they want to share in that regard or ask about how it's going?
Will there be a real evaluation of the cost benefit afterward? I mean, like I have a friend who works at the World War One museum, and it is a nightmare for him. I mean,
To get in.
They have a clear bag policy. He can't get anywhere near it. So I know that the politicians will say, "Gosh, it was wonderful. It's the greatest thing ever."
I don't know that all of them will, because some were kind of opposed to it to begin with. But so the state of Kansas, I think we put about 26 million toward public safety transportation, and that is to be used on the Kansas side for just all the increase in what we have coming here. And I do believe, because these questions were asked during our appropriations meetings this previous session, and FIFA, well, it's not FIFA, it was the local group that was organizing the World Cup folks. They would come and give us updates. And it's already been requested that we want to know where the money was spent and what exactly it all went toward, because they're like, well, we haven't spent it. And we're not going to start until now. Like, it's going to start rolling out for the transportation and the public safety components of it. So we have asked for an accounting for that. And I don't know if you've all heard that some of the FIFA hotel room blocks that they had were maybe that's not open still. Thank you. Was that locked?
It was.
But anyway, we do want an accounting of what the cost benefit was, because I think also if we're going to look at hosting regional and global events, that we want to have a better understanding of what resources we need as well as what benefits we get, because of course hotels and restaurants and all of goods and services being purchased right now is going to benefit us, but we probably won't have a look at that until next year when we go back in January.
I do a specific thing about the free transportation I know it's not your deal, it's county, but I've read that they're going to evaluate whether they'll continue the free transportation. That seems kind of, you cut bus service for people getting to work, but you're going to provide free transportation to the airport for people.
I hope they explore what's working and what's not, though, because I think people are really appreciating having transport to the airport, and I don't know if free is necessary. But I really hope that they look at what worked and what didn't with the transportation, because a big part of why we had to put forth these funds is because our public transportation wasn't going to be enough to accommodate all these visitors that most likely aren't going to have a vehicle to get around in. So I really hope that we study that further and make more accessible bus trips to the airport, and who knows, maybe other events and things we can learn from this. But I don't know. I haven't heard if they were going to keep it free or not, but I hope they. I've already heard from people taking the bus to the airport over here, so I think people are going to want to keep that as an amenity to use.
I hope if they keep it, they charge for it, because this free stuff, that's our taxpayers, our
That's-
tax dollars, number one. Number two, we just live across the street, so we've watched these empty buses go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Hardly anybody's riding on them. I mean, it's just a big waste. And
Yeah.
these two hotels over here, those were supposed to be open for World Cup. Who's gonna come out here and stay in those? They're not taking reservations till October. I looked it up.
I heard this one got and part of the reason why the Ad Astra pool got delayed as well, but I guess they got some flooding issues. They had something
Those
going
men
on.
had been working 7 days a
Yeah.
week from 7 or 8 in the morning till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. And they never got it open. And I looked to see when they would be taking reservations. October is the soonest.
Yeah. I think they had some. What I heard is there's been some issues with water, and I don't know if it's. I don't know what they're having to clean up after, but
I
there
bet
was
there's
something.
gonna be wrecks out the wazoo, the way people drive out there on 87th, and people constantly going the wrong way into oncoming traffic. We see that all the time. I think people trying to get in and out of parking over here, there's gonna be a ton of wrecks.
Well, I hope they get back on track and can get going. But I've definitely come across people that have gone the wrong way on these, so I know that's an issue. But there's a learning curve when there's any change in the city area. But overall, I think this is going to be a great amenity for the pool and everything else around here. So there've been a number of projects that got delayed with weather, and I didn't realize that there was kind of a massive water event over there. Because the Ad Astra pool, the city of Lenexia's pool, is pretty delayed as well, and I think that they had some issues with water. So, but I've heard it's going to open this season, so hopefully they are able to get it open before it's time to close again. Another thing, so we haven't assigned our interim committees yet. So every year we adjourn, and then the legislative coordinating council that's made up of our House leadership and Senate leadership, they will meet to go over committee requests. So different members of the legislature can request an interim to study different topics. We have some that are statutory. For instance, I'm on the Joint Corrections and Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee. We likely won't go until November. Our days have been approved, so anything statutory has been approved or existing, but they've delayed some of the approval for we had like a record number of requests for days for these interims, and a lot of the legislature members from both sides of the aisle have kind of said enough is enough. We're having too many of these, and we can't take official action, and we're all just like getting paid extra for going in for these things. So unless we have a crucial thing we need to study or look at, or get our research department to really put together information for us, or if a group is really going to put a bill together and work through that, then we need to start cutting back on these interim days that we're having, because it's just getting out of control. And if we're going to rush the session just to kick things down the road to interims, that costs us extra. And then we come up with conclusions when the legislature's not in session and we can't take action on it. So the leadership on both sides of the aisle and both chambers have said, okay, we're going to hit pause a little bit on these interims and really put forth the days we need and not overdo it. Because one of my committees last year, I had all these recommendations I had prepared. They wouldn't accept any of my recommendations. No one else made any. So we ended up with just one little tiny recommendation from this 3-day committee. And I was like, why are we meeting for 3 days if we're not going to take the time to, output what we want to see the legislature take action on or focus their priorities. So I'm glad that they're taking this seriously, not just approving everything under the sun, because it really does get over the top, and we should do our business when we're in session, when most people in the media are paying attention to what we're doing. That's when it's best to study things and take action. So there will still be quite a few interims going on this year, but it's not going to be as robust as it was last year. But we don't have those all approved and assigned at this point, so I don't know if I'm going to have any more. I have Select Committee on Government Oversight is going to meet, and Corrections and Juvenile Justice, but as far as I know, those are the only ones I'll be doing in the interim. And a lot of that, I think, also has to do with the big election year. So a number of our leaders are running for statewide office or other things. So another reason to maybe not overdo it when we're not in session. Hi, welcome.
Hello.
You want to? My colleague Jared Owsley's here. I'll let you. So we just.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Joella, do you know what's going on with property taxes right now? And where does Governor Kelly stand on that?
Oh, I'm gonna let Jared introduce himself, and then we can talk
Okay.
property taxes. It'd be good.
So, good Sunday afternoon.
So beautiful.
Apologize for my tardiness. I come from the land of Merriam. It took me a minute to navigate the Lenexa City Hall here, but I do represent House District 24, which is most of Merriam, Northern Overland Park, Western Mission, and I have for the last 12 years. And after the redistricting, they took me personally out of Senate District 10 and dropped me into Senate District 21. So House District 24 has Senate District 21, 6, 7 currently, not 10. So Joella said she was going to be alone on the panel up here, and it'd be a good time for me to make an introduction. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Oh,
So we talked a little bit about World Cup. I was talking about interims and how those haven't all been approved, and we're cutting back on those a little bit. Do you have anything that you've been meeting on in the interim that is of note?
My child welfare committees, I've practiced or spent a lot of time serving on child welfare committees in one form, fashion, or another, and those are set to meet again coming up soon. So I'm also on Kansas Securities Committee, which is interesting. Talk about the World Cup. There was a lot of overlap between, that build up, where we're at today, and how we got here. I believe I'm on another interim committee, but I don't think I've heard whether we're meeting yet or not. So we'll stay tuned.
All right, so we had a question about the property taxes, and I've kind of had a whole different way I'm thinking about this now after what we experienced last session, where we were told property tax is going to be the priority. It was not a priority. We started with the bill to take transgender people's driver's license away, and then it also made us it was a bathroom bill about what bathrooms you can use. We did a lot of elections bills, and it was just the property tax component of the session came very last minute, very late. And my perception of it is on the House side, our ranking member and our chair, so a Republican and a Democrat, they're really trying to figure something out that isn't going to really strain our cities and school districts. They've come up with this revolving average that when your property values go up, you're not going to see that increase right away. It's going to gradually increase instead of the large increase right away. If your neighbors are selling houses that are way more than what you bought your house for. The House has overwhelmingly voted in favor of that, both parties, and then the Senate, their plans would be detrimental to our communities, and it would make it very hard for them to pay for the services. And I mean, I just look at Lenexa, and I think when I'm in other cities and towns, and I'm like, wow, these curbs are just terrible. Like our curb replacement programs, are all the things we have for our parks, and our public safety, it would be really put at risk with the Senate's plan. But they refuse to take up the House bill, and the House refused. Well, we did take up theirs. We just voted it down. So with the vastly different mentalities about property taxes between the House and the Senate, I just don't think the legislature is going to be one to solve this. We have eliminated the state of Kansas does not have any property tax on our bills anymore. The 20 mills that we provide on our property tax bill, that is all dedicated to the schools. It's a very small amount, a small portion of people's property tax bill. The biggest portions are from municipalities. So to me, the state, let the people out and about things like this need to stop promising that we're going to do much, because any sort of meaningful change that you would notice on your property tax bill would be a mandate to our communities that the caps that we've eliminated in the past didn't help. They actually made it worse. So I'm not optimistic that the state is going to be able to do much. Of course, we can't do anything until January anyway, because we're out of session. So whatever that may look like would be something the new governor would be deciding whether or not to sign off on. So my personal view of it is, I don't think the legislature I think we've done what we can on property tax, and we need to be looking at other ways to make things more affordable for Kansans. We have all sorts of other services that we provide, that we charge for, that we could look at ourselves instead of pointing fingers at our local governments when that's really out of our control. So that's my position. I don't think that the issue is going to die down, though. I do think there will still be discussions about property taxes in the next legislature, and we'll just have to see where that goes.
Everything from a data center to a lemonade stand gets tax relief. Does anybody track the cost of that? You know, how many billions of dollars are deferred and not, lost? Any member of the legislature can ask our research department to put these things together, and I don't serve on the tax committee, so I don't know if they are tracking all of these, but there has also been a lot of discussion about all of the tax credits that we have, and a lot of people feel like we could probably eliminate those and provide some property tax relief, or maybe in the form of rebates instead. Do you want to comment on property tax?
I would say one thing, just I agree with Representative Hoy here, and that it was not a priority last session, the session before, as had been promised upon the campaign trail. But I think if we are going to have any meaningful property tax relief, it's got to be, a coalition between, our united school districts and our local municipalities, our counties, because as mentioned, the 20 mills that goes to the state, a lot of that is just to be redistributed so that we meet our equitable portion of our state funding. And I've said for a while now, the state is currently pushing off $200 and some million on to local USDs by not holding our obligation to fund special education. So districts are actually having to raise that money locally that they would not have to otherwise had the state been writing the check. And I think if the state wanted to talk about property tax relief, that's one of the most meaningful ways.
And we have, with the elimination of the 1.5 mils off our tax bill, I mean, that saves people about, I think, $70. And then we've done some moving around on your first, is it to the first 100,000 now, or 75,000. So there has been some savings, but as people's property values continue to go up, it's not going to really be something you notice on like, oh, I'm still paying more. But there have been some slight cuts over the last 2 years. So again, it's just really hard for the state when we're not the ones who are levying the property tax to cut much and save much, because we don't have that. We're not the ones.
And I don't. Thank you all for having me. And if I wear out my welcome, let me know. I know where the door's at. I'm not positive I can find the parking lot again, but I got a good idea of where it's at. But Commissioner Hanslick with Johnson County Board of Commissioners, she did a fine job getting together with the county's budget department and looking at where your property taxes go, where my property taxes go, as far as, you know, county resources. And some of those are paired with state laws, state mandates that have been passed that are unfunded mandates. I don't know if you know that the state is guilty of that a lot, but they'll say, you know, you have to do this within existing resources. Now, whether that's to a municipality, a school district, a department, an agency, it's just not uncommon. And to a certain point, you know, you can expect some things like that. But when it happens repeated, you know, time and time again, and then with larger ticket items, take the bathroom bill, you know, for instance, or the cell phone ban bill. You know, we heard pushbacks from school districts upon how much that was going to cost them, and the state didn't have any funding, you know, appointed to that. I think one of the last bills we voted on, they were talking about providing school meals to children, you know, year round, which is an excellent deal. But if there's a USD component of that funding and then the state's mandate, well, now you're just putting something else on top of them when you're already shorting them, you know, the 220 something, you know, statewide. I think it's 80 plus million just within Johnson County. So it's interesting. So when state politicians or candidates talk about property tax relief from a state level, I'm fearful of some misunderstanding or some disingenuous statements, sentiment. Because, like I say, if we wanted to really have property tax relief, I think the biggest thing the state could do is fund spend.
And just to go into the fund sped component of why that would make a difference on our property tax is because special education is fully funded. The school districts have to provide those services. So when we say funding sped, we're talking about the excess costs that the school district have, and they're paying that would otherwise be going to the classroom and their other services. So each school district had this year expected that the legislature would have a minimum 50 million that we had, because we had kind of built up each year how much we were going to put in for public education, and instead we only did 6 million. So each school district had shortfalls that they weren't planning on because they thought the legislature was going to keep their word on this, did not. And so Shawnee Mission actually fared a little better. They didn't have to make cuts, but they had heard over and over from parents that they want a counselor in all the schools, and they were going to hire some more counselors. Now they're not able to do that, whereas Olathe, Blue Valley, and DeSoto actually did have to make some cuts because of that funding didn't come in for them. And all the excess costs they have to make up because the state is not providing our fair share comes from the local taxpayers. So that really would have an impact on if they didn't have to fund their legal obligation for special ed costs. And schools are going to be faced with larger classroom sizes or cutting extracurriculars, things like that. And that's why I think these school districts have banded together to have the courts look at this again, because it's just not, they're not on a sustainable path because the state's not providing the funding that we said we would. But yeah, that would help with property taxes because the other problem is when you look at the states, like how much, when you're looking statewide to cut just a little bit in a property tax, the taxpayer doesn't see any savings, but the cut then to whatever services you're providing is dramatic. So it's really hard to find relief there, and I think we need to look at some other things. And frankly, Governor Kelly had the best plan years ago. I think this was maybe back 2 years into COVID when we did have all the federal money coming in and we were looking at having some excess funding. When a taxing entity has excess funding that they didn't budget and their rainy day fund is solid, cut a check back to the taxpayers. Those are the people who just paid all that money. If they don't get to benefit from those services, send some of it back. And I think there'd be a good way to build some sort of formula into that, where if we take in X amount of dollars, but we're only going to spend Y, then we're going to cut checks back to the taxpayers. And that's really the most equitable way to do it, and a safe way or you're going to get yourself in the red down the road. So, but now we've spent our one-time expenditures. We've done a lot. We've done a lot of tax cutting. We've cut taxes on Social Security, state taxes, with the grocery tax. We've done some real efforts to try to save money. We're not very good at the property tax issue.
Yeah.
What else? What are you hearing out there? Either nationally, statewide, locally.
Well, I mentioned data centers.
Oh yeah.
What are data, whatever, it seems to be in the news every day. And the interesting thing to me is that people are starting to pay attention to things like taxes issues. And, what has the state done? Or, are you looking at things to, sound pollution, the noise pollution, all of the issues, not to mention water and electricity. And I know even when they say they generate their own electricity, they do it with fossil fuels. And so you can't claim you care about the climate and be in favor of data centers. So are you guys doing anything?
Well, I think with the data centers, it is a tricky issue because I do see it a lot, and a lot of people are starting to question it. But at the same time, the people I think making it kind of a big campaign focus are making. Oh,
Sorry.
was she trying to do?
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
I don't know. The little thing that we used to have to unlock it isn't there anymore.
it.
The noise was too bad, so.
Come on in.
1800.
I just we're on data centers. I think consumer behavior is not showing me that data centers are going away. To watch people, posting little AI generated memes and then Facebook videos about data centers. I'm like, you just used, you're using the data centers right now to post all this. So consumer behavior is not showing me that people really truly don't want data centers. I think it's a matter of the awareness that people have about it, that we do need to address the issues about electricity and water. I know China is actually building their data centers under the ocean so that they don't have the issue with the cooling. There are other ways that you can make that more sustainable down the road because they do. I mean, it is a big issue for power, and I understand why people have these questions and concerns, and we need to address that. But as far as saying we don't want any more data centers, I just don't think our behaviors are leading that way.
Well, I just don't think we should give billionaires and now trillionaires tax breaks so that they can build them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I know that a lot of people like the reason I supported the tax incentives for the data centers is because the jobs it creates for the people building them. It is absolutely true that they don't have a lot of jobs once they're open. They do have staff on there, but we have there's one over in Shawnee. It's small. I didn't even realize it was a data center until somebody started, because I was very hesitant on what to do on that particular bill. And once I realized more about how much we're relying on them, I was like, okay, well, this does seem like a good for Kansas workers. But now that there is more awareness, I don't think we did enough to put parameters on our expectations of what they're going to be like once they come to our communities.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. Because I think the only thing the state's done regarding data centers is last biennium. So, pre the last election, we passed a bill stating that data centers could be constructed in Kansas, and it was a Wichita specific, situation. And I want to say we gave them sales tax exemption upon construction materials. So I think personally that's the only vote that I can recall that we've had. Now, I'm going to ask for a little grace from y'all. As I said, I've been in the House for 12 years, and these last two bienniums have been two of the most fast-paced I mean, just whirlwind. They're starting the budget, after Thanksgiving and trying to cram through the budget, the first week of session. So, if memory doesn't serve me absolutely 100% accurate, please do correct me on it. But I think that's all the state's done on data centers. But other than that, I think I agree. There's a lot of unknowns. I think I read somewhere the Netherlands, they're building them in their canals. There's closed loop systems. One of the main drivers of water consumption was some like swamp coolers that were in some of the first data systems. So there are improvements that could be made to where we can live with our data provided and not destroy our environment. Whether or not we're there yet, I don't know. And I will say that the legislature, with this Commerce Secretary, our Lieutenant Governor, has not prescribed a lot of details in statute, but left a lot of it up to negotiations, that come outside of the statute books. That way, if they hit a brick wall in negotiations, whatnot, they don't have to come back to the legislature. We're not calling a special session to come back and rewrite laws, when it comes to things considered economic development.
It would seem like you could regulate pollution, like from diesel generators, water pollution they're not all closed systems, and I don't think closed systems are actually that closed. And so it would seem like you could do some things to make them pay their own way.
I've even heard of putting a hydroelectric system within them to where you're cooling and generating electricity at the same time. So, what's the future hold? I don't know. And how much of that can we, regulate per statute, and how much of that needs to be a deal by deal basis, and
They won't do that until it's economically feasible, until it's too costly for them to dump pollution.
and somebody may force that hand to make it, feasible. But we'll see because I know Wisconsin currently has quite a big uproar. And so the more states I think that are having that be the center of focus, the quicker we'll get there.
Alabama's really being the citizens of Alabama. I just saw on TV the other night. They're up in arms.
My youngest listened to me talking with a lobbyist about data centers the other day. He was like ashamed of me. He's 15. He's like, Dad, why are you even entertaining that idea? He's like, I don't care how many jobs it brings. We don't need AI. It's just going to take other people's jobs. So he was turned off to the whole thing just out of the get-go. And I understand, son, but some things aren't, that black and white. There's a little gray area in between. And it's my job to listen.
It was more electricity costs.
Yep.
And
Has it improved?
in Hall Talk, I've heard, that the data centers would love to generate their own electricity, but Evergy has a pretty good, footprint in the state of Kansas. And if they're generating their own electricity and they're large consumers of electricity,
That's where there's like small field nuclear reactors.
The reactors, yeah.
Deep fission and things like that. I'm curious like how that's going.
Well, and because I know K-State is adding some additional spots for their program, for the nuclear program. There are places in Kansas that we cannot have data centers. I mean, Western Kansas, where there's no water, there are places they cannot go there, should not go there. And I'm kind of on the same boat with the AI, where I'm just like, why? But on the same token, you don't necessarily get to pick which data centers. So the ones that are holding our medical records and legal documents, and I mean, there's so many things that are stored in the cloud and that the data centers are used for. Like, how do you prioritize? Like, okay, we're all going to give up our social media, but we still get to have the data here. Like, it is a complicated problem now that is on people's minds, but we're already pretty far down the road on relying on these places. So it is something that we need to address environmentally. The legislature, this is one issue that we don't work on much in the legislature, is in the environment. Like, we hardly ever have stuff come up like that.
You mentioned the disconnect. If people had to pay $1 to create their cat video,
There you go.
think twice about it.
Love that. Well, and that's just the base. So we've had a number of discussions about online safety and what's appropriate for kids and this and that. And the internet is just, it's unregulated. These companies could do whatever they want. And I think that is probably a component of the data center issue is making sure that the internet is safe and that we have a smart way of looking at age verification. Everything's going to be traded and back and forth and communicated through the internet. And that's another thing that we need to sit down and figure out.
No, and we talk about digital education, and that came up, during the cell phone ban bill, right? Because they're like, the phones are the evil part. Well, I'm sure that everybody in this room once upon a time knew a phone when it made a phone call. It wasn't a computer, it wasn't a camera, it wasn't, a texting device even. It's a communication device. And I'm active in a council of state governments, and at one of their, I want to say it was a Midwest conference, and so it's going to be a bunch of Midwest states and a few Canadian provinces, and they'll get together, they'll have a conference, and they'll discuss ideas. How are you dealing with data centers? How are you dealing with cell phones? And one of the speakers over the luncheon one day was talking about social media and the consumption and the impact upon children's brains, and how if we really truly wanted to address it, we would go after the companies, not the devices, because that device is always going to be there, right? That kids are going to outsmart us. But if these companies don't have these algorithms and these, teams of marketing researchers figuring out how to get that child or that individual, I'm guilty just the same with doom scrolling, how to get them to sit there and just be addicted to the feed, because it gives you what you want. I swear, I can think something, and then there's an advertisement on my phone. I don't even have to say it out loud. I just think it. And, so there are ways to do that, but it's not that easy one size fits all. Here's a piece of legislation that's going to solve everything. Look what we did. Now we're moving on. Everything's a little bit more complicated if you want to get right down to it and have something meaningful. So.
But those issues are connected. And we did have a bill last session about age verification, and it was not, it was really brought to us by one of the major big tech companies, and it was not going to be done in a way, to me, that protected kids' data, and that was going to cause way more problems than it was going to solve. So that one went down pretty hard. I have been having some meetings about this, and just offline with folks. And since I serve on the transportation committee, our chair this was maybe last year or the year before, he had an informational session with the Department of Revenue about being able to have your driver's license on your phone. And this would be completely voluntary, your choice, whether or not, like when you go get your driver's license, check here, do you also want it available on your phone? Then you would be able to, let's say, so I've been getting a couple emails, I'm sure you've seen in the news that the one age verification that we did pass was for harmful to children. It's pornography. And I've gotten some complaints from people that are like, I don't want to get on here and put my driver's license and have to take a scan of it and put it in here, which I totally understand. If we had this option with our driver's license, all you would have to do, once it's verified through the Department of Revenue, the only information about you that would be shared with the company or whatever you're trying to access would be your date of birth, if that's all they need to know. If they just need to make sure you're old enough to see what or shop for whatever materials that you're looking at, they only need your date of birth. They don't need your name. They don't need your driver's license. They don't number. They don't need your date of birth. They don't need your address. Now, are there going to be some times where you would need that, where it does need to show a few of those things? Yes. And then it would provide that information of what is required in order to do whatever it is you're trying to do and prove your age. So to me, that would solve a lot of issues if we just, for privacy and things like that, of verifying ourselves online. But there is some real conspiracy theories out there about digital IDs. So I think that's why we've kind of hit a bump in the road on doing this. But honestly, I think that shares your privacy more than if you have to show your whole driver's license at a liquor store or something. So that's still something that I would support and push for. And I think it would solve a lot of the online. I mean, You look at alcohol, tobacco, gambling, guns, all these things that aren't accessible to our kids online. We really do need to solve the age verification issue. But we don't need Meta to take the lead on it. It's not how they want to do it.
And in those discussions, that's where it's nice to have, a team of our colleagues, because my phone still has a button on it. These are not conversations that I'm going to be able to contribute a ton into. I'm a painter by trade. When my airless sprayers started getting, auto clean and whatnot on them, that was as close to technology as I used on the job site. So, I some days we're living in the future and we're figuring it out how to go.
There's a boatload of Democrats running for governor and against Marshall. How do we know anything? I mean, where do you go to find out about these people? Is there a place that you can go to that you can look up these 20-some people and see what's going on with them? I mean, it's June,
Yeah, I mean, I guess since I'm on the House campaign committee for electing for Democrats for the House of Representatives, I haven't really paid as close of attention for the U.S. Senate, but they're going to be spending their efforts getting out to you. They're going to send you mail. They're going to send you ads. They're going to try to call you or maybe have people come to your door. They should have a website. And if they don't have that and you're not hearing from them, I would say probably they're not going to be a very strong candidate to face Marshall, would be my opinion on that.
I mean, a mailer that says, "Hi, I'm running for this office," that tells me nothing.
There was a gubernatorial debate.
How do I know there's like 10 people running for each? How do you might have some connections, but how do we know who the hell to vote for?
Surely every one of them's got a website.
Yeah,
You might just have to click on each website individually, send an email, see what kind of response you get.
Are you saying all of them have a website?
They should. If you're going to be running for a U.S. Senate campaign, you should have a website. And if not, I would be skeptical of that being a serious campaign. And it's really the candidate's job to introduce themselves and put their information out. So if you're not feeling like they're doing that, it might not be a very strong campaign. That's my opinion, because they should be having events like this. They should be going out running advertisements. They should be doing all they can to get their news out to you.
Meet and greets and ice cream socials. You just have to find what form of communication your candidate is putting out or an individual candidate's putting out, and then see what events they're advertising from there. Because like I say, I know there was a gubernatorial debate yesterday at a church in KCK. And I think all the candidates showed up to that. I know there was a KCUR interview with the Democratic front three candidates 2 or 3 nights ago. As far as the United States Senate goes, I couldn't name you all the candidates. I don't know all the candidates.
Sorry, what?
I don't know all the candidates running for United States Senate. I wouldn't know where to go and find them. I know the front runners, but that's kind of all I know.
Yeah. And I heard, I didn't get a chance to tune into the KCUR one that was broadcast from Overland Park Farmers Market, but I've seen people posting about it and they said it was really well done. So if you're uncertain on if you're voting in the Democratic primary on August 4th, I would watch that for sure. Because you can go back and watch it or listen to it, and I've heard that was a good one.
So then we learn about them, and then we guess which one can be Masterson or which one can be Marshall. We just have to guess. That's a hell of a way to run a democracy.
Unless if you want to trust an endorsement. There's plenty of endorsements out there where people have weighed in. And if you've got an organization or an individual that you trust, to have done that research, you can go with that,
Yeah. My guess is there will be a lot more, at least I don't know about from the US Senate, but from the gubernatorial candidates, it'll be closer to the actual primary because, they got to raise money for the primary and the general. So they're going to probably wait a little bit longer to get some of that out just because of what they have to be able to afford, what they can afford with their campaigns. But I do think there will be other opportunities to watch debates and things like that. But to me, what I heard was that KCUR one was a good one to, if you're undecided, to tune into. Which, speaking of the primary, be sure to vote in it, even if whether you're Democrat, Republican, unaffiliated. I think the most important thing is to remind our unaffiliated voters that they get to vote in this one because there's a constitutional amendment on there about the Supreme Court selection process. I think the good thing about having these primaries for the Democratic seats is that people will turn out. If we only have one, if we don't have primaries going, what do we have as good a turnout? And it's very important in my opinion, to have a merit-based selection process for the Supreme Court justices and not like what Wisconsin has and have partisan elections for our Supreme Courts. And I've heard a few things out there about, we need to weigh in on this and voters are informed and they do know. And I just kept thinking, like, who can anyone tell me the Supreme Court justices? Can you name the Kansas justices? Isn't that kind of a good thing that they're not the ones out there, having to campaign and be super political and partisan, and they just get to focus on the Constitution and looking at what our Constitution says as it relates to our laws and what we're trying to put forth from the legislature and the executive branch. So to me, Kansas has it right, and the way that they're selected, a group of attorneys from the bar. There's a selection committee. They put forth 3 names to the governor, and then the governor gets to select from that list. So these are qualified people. They are, know what they're doing. They have a record of standing up for the Constitution, and that is what we want. We don't want to get super political over the Constitution. That would be.
I think Elon Musk spent 20-some million on a judicial race in Wisconsin.
I think you're right. Yeah, that millions. I mean, that race was
27 million.
Yeah, but others were in there too. I think
that was just
that was one person.
Yeah.
And when you look at some of the rulings that come out of Kansas and what this amendment is really about, they want to take some of our rights away.
And they want to defund our schools. But I'm using my AI right now, trying to, because I don't know, whatever, I'm trying to Google. Because we have this process right now, because in 1957, Kansas had what they called the triple play, and somebody that's a better historian than I could, elaborate more on it. But back then it was a governor appointment process, kind of like the federal model. And the then governor, the one who had brought us the right to work constitutional amendment in 1958, and that's the only reason I know any of this, because I was looking into repealing that constitutional amendment a while ago. It was a $28 million campaign in 1957, if memory serves me correctly. So it was a big deal. And then as this governor came towards the end of his term, he stepped down, lieutenant governor stepped up, Chief Justice stepped down on the Supreme Court, lieutenant governor appointed, recently retired, governor to a lifetime appointment on our Supreme Court. Kansas decided that was not okay and that we shouldn't allow our justices to be appointed like that. So we moved to our current merit-based system to avoid, fraudulent appointments like that. And I want to say our appellate court, that's what I was trying to look up, because when I was first elected, still a green legislator, I want to say they changed our appellate court selection process from a merit-based to a federal model where the governor just gets to appoint, like our former Supreme Court model was. And they were able to pull that off in 2015, 2016, because it was only in statute. But they embedded this in 1960, or whenever they course corrected, they embedded it in the Constitution. So it takes 2/3, but that appellate court selection only took simple or constitutional majority in both chambers and a governor's signature. So they were able to get it with, 63, 21 and 1 decades ago. And they've been working on this ever since. And, the bodily autonomy rulings from our Supreme Court stating that every Kansan had the right to bodily autonomy, striking down abortion laws. That sure, put some motivation behind some people. And then these court rulings, as we're coming out of the end of the, Gannon jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. I think they let go of jurisdiction 2 years ago. But they know that we're ready to go right back to court if we don't keep our promise to keep funding our school formula so that our USDs can function. And now we're on the verge of special education funding. So there are reasons for this. And then you talk about trillionaires and, being able to buy things. While we have money in elections and dark money in elections at that, it's really putting the courts up for sale, whereas currently every judge stands for a retention vote in the state of Kansas. So we have a chance to unelect any judge, if there's wrongdoings. And on this one, if you were looking for, a place to go to help decide your vote, I would say go to, the Bar Association, the Kansas Bar Association, the Johnson County Bar Association. I mentioned I was a paint contractor in a past lifetime. And, once upon a time, I knew a plumbing contractor, a roofer, and I'd have a customer say, oh, I was picking up the yellow pages, to find something. Oh, no, don't do that. I'm not saying there's not good people in the yellow pages, but you've got somebody right now that works with all these other fields that I give you my word that these people are going to come and treat your house in a respectful manner and give you a fair price. And that's what I feel like we have in the merit system is we've got attorneys working with attorneys that are working with judges, and those are the ones that are going to understand the operations, better so.
I do believe the Bar Association, they're doing some outreach, I know, to our local chambers. And I believe the Shawnee Chamber is going to be embedding a video on their website that the Bar Association is just putting together facts and some information for voters regarding the constitutional amendment that is on the primary August 4th. So that is definitely going to be something that you could look for on different websites and probably the Bar Association itself, because there's some of the vote yes stuff that I've seen. It does sound fairly convincing, and it's kind of like, oh yeah. But then when you think about I remember when I was an early on voter, and the first time I ever got to judges, and I was like, oopsie, didn't know didn't look into that. And so I remember just being like, well, that one lives in my town, so I'm going to vote for that person. And some people, they have their own ways of when they don't know how they cast a voter, they just stop voting. And then you don't, it's just not a good way to handle that branch of government, in my opinion. We need expertise and to keep the partisanship out of it.
I come from Wichita, where we don't have fluoride in the water, and that we elected our county judges, and we had some weird judges elected in Sedgwick County, that's for sure. But it's because that's where the money was.
Yeah.
But I actually think Sedgwick is one of the only judicial districts that elects their judges. Because here in District 10, we don't elect our judges. It's merit-based system.
Any questions or comments on the constitutional amendment? That's going to be here before we know it.
Did you say it's a 2/3 to pass that?
No,
Or it's
it's of the legislature. So in order to do a constitutional amendment to change the Kansas Constitution, the legislature has to have a 2/3 majority, which the Republicans have a supermajority in both, a 2/3 supermajority in both the House and the Senate. So they're able to put constitutional amendments out there fairly easily. And that's this the one we got out there this time.
And it's a simple majority then to pass it?
Yeah, of the voters. Once it gets on the ballot, which we also tried to put it on the November ballot. We did do an amendment to try to make it not on the primary, because you would want more voters to decide this than just primary voters. It's always way less voter turnout. But that failed. That amendment failed.
No, and honestly, when I was first elected, I think Republicans had a greater majority in both chamber, but there were more factions within that majority that people were like, no, we know this is wrong, and they wouldn't. Matter of fact, last time I was in this room, I think I was the only elected Democrat in the room at the time. So it's been a little while. This is not, new news. This has been a long time coming, and the campaign that I think we'll watch unfold for the vote yes is it's going to be a lot of money. It's going to be a lot of influence. But Kansas showed us the constitutional amendment last time. I had friends from across the nation calling and saying, "Wow, you all did it." Kudos. And so I know we can do it. And it's just going to be getting everybody to the polls and getting them educated. Not letting the dark money on the postcard be their education. But actual history and facts. So
Yeah, because my district, I haven't checked, I guess, kind of this election cycle, but I'm fairly close to like a third Republican, a third Democrat, a third unaffiliated. So we've got a lot of voters, especially in this area, that are unaffiliated and may or may not know that they can go out and vote for this one. So that the education component of that is an issue with it being on the primary, because not everybody thinks they can vote in a primary.
I'm unaffiliated, and when I go to the primary, they ask which ballot I want.
And you can say I'm unaffiliated and I'll be voting on the constitutional amendment.
But I'm saying, I can say, I'll take the Republican one, or I'll take.
But you can you change?
you can affiliate.
Yeah, but you do have
if
to.
you're affiliated.
You can vote, choose a ballot, but you do have to affiliate then at that time.
And also, isn't it provisional if you affiliate on the day of, so it doesn't actually count unless
It didn't seem to for me.
It will
So-
count. They cure those ballots and then it will, but it won't get counted the day of the election. So they'll cure those. It'll take. I mean, I think it can take a good 2 weeks to get it all through the process, because there's the number of provisional ballots they get. And I was just at the Shawnee Chamber thing where they were saying the Bar Association is putting out some informational stuff. We had the election commissioner there, and she was talking about all the ballots they get and the stuff that they have to do when they're looking at the provisionals. And she said they get a lot of people where they have a mail ballot and the husband signs the wife's and the wife signs the husband. So they follow up, and they will go as far as they can to get these votes counted, and then ultimately it's up to the Board of Canvassing, which is either the Board of County Commissioners or their appointees, and then they get to decide of these which votes get to count. So for something like that, it should be very much so counted, because you affiliated and cast that ballot. But it does take a little longer to get those counted. And also the 3-day grace period officially over, so those ballots have to be in by 7 p.m. on Sunday. So she was saying, the Johnson County Election Commissioner was saying, don't use the mail, use our drop boxes. Go look where those are, and they are putting more there's going to be a drop box at every Johnson County Library location.
So when you say you're affiliated in order to get say I want the Democrat ticket, that doesn't change your status, or it does change
So
it?
in Missouri, you can just say, I want to vote the Democratic primary, and you can. In Kansas, you can say, I want to vote the Democratic primary, and you can, but you have to affiliate then. They don't allow unaffiliated to vote in a primary, in a partisan primary.
Okay.
So you do have to then affiliate it. And you can go change it back later if you
Sure.
want, but
Okay.
in order to vote in a Republican primary or Democrat primary, you have to then change your party affiliation.
But then you have to remember to go and switch it back and make sure you follow those timelines and guidelines to switch it back. So
Yeah.
it's
But regardless, whether an affiliated person decides that they want to vote in those, they still get a ballot that'll have the constitutional amendment on it.
Okay.
So all his adventures in voting.
I didn't think we were gonna have much to talk about.
Always do.
Yeah, I know. I know that the thing that's really a bummer when we have these things to vote, it takes so much effort for the volunteers who go out to knock doors to say vote no, and takes us away from the candidates and worrying about the primary that you were talking about, and it's just a double whammy to prevent bad things from happening.
I do think probably that having this amendment on the primary, a lot of outside groups that normally kind of would weigh in on primary stuff, they're working on the amendment. So I think that's getting a lot of attention. But it is coming up, and then it'll switch to the general stuff, and then
I know you all can't speak for Dinah, she's not here, but do you know why she decided to run for insurance commissioner and not continue in the Senate?
well, so I think this is her she's in her third term.
But first and foremost, any senator, any state senator running for statewide office is not on the ballot to be a state senator. So they retain that seat
Right.
if they don't seek that higher office. So it's kind of a senator's free pass for a statewide run, and it's always been that way.
Yep.
So you always get a lot more state senate candidates for statewide. Think back a few years ago, we had a couple treasury, candidates. So it's not one or the other to say. It's given the insurance commission a shot.
Yeah, regardless of the outcome, Dinah will still be an elected official after the election. She'll either be a state senator or the insurance commissioner. So I know that she's down the road in her terms and doing a fabulous job as our senator. I think people really wanted someone to step up and run for that race, and she ended up being the right person for the job. So she did it, and she's out there hitting the trail. And I will say, talking about the things we're seeing, I'm seeing a lot from Dinah. She's done a good job.
Setting herself up for a run for governor in 4 years.
I think also you look at what Kathleen Sebelius did. She was our insurance commissioner, and Kansas is getting a lot of national attention because of the way the voters have voted in some of these constitutional amendment changes. And since there's only 11 insurance commissioners state or nationwide, I think she's getting some national attention as well.
No, and honestly, if you look at our current insurance commissioner, 2 terms is insurance commissioner, former state senator, and now running for governor. Personally, I wish Vicki would just stay there and keep being our insurance commissioner. The few times I've had to deal with the office as a Kansan, it's been delightful, and I can say that their communication with the legislature and the things that they bring us that they need their help on, I've got no complaints at all. So we'll see.
She's done a wonderful job, and the person that Dinah's running against is terrifying in that position. So.
But then we could talk about the Secretary of State's office and how scary that position is, because we talk about as difficult as it is today to get your ballot, make sure it's counted.
Yeah.
The 3-day grace period's over. The commissioner's closing, early voting polls here in the county. That's frightening. So no, there's a lot at stake these next couple of elections.
Yep.
There's a lot at stake.
That's why everybody really needs a buddy system for voting, because I just feel like this president, if he starts getting certain feelings around election time, that he's the type to go bully people at the polls. And so we gotta get out there and make our voices heard at the polls. But currently, the way Kansas elections are operated are very professional, and they've tried to search for fraud, and I think they found like 3 cases. So,
Yeah.
and I think 2 of them were unintentional. So I think our elections are pretty good here.
Well, if we're wrapping up, I just want to say thank you for having me, and I'll try to make it back here more.
Yeah, come back.
Dinah is my senator. I should make an appearance in here more often. Ethan Corson, Senate 7, also overlaps almost half of my district. And I try to make a monthly appearance over there, but I've been neglectful upon making it out here. maybe if I find my way around and I get a little bit more comfortable, we'll be back more often.
And you can get yourself some treats down there.
You just have to smell the delicious food. You know you're in the right place when you.
Well, just don't drive the wrong way out here on
Yeah.
87th Street.
That is definitely scary when that happens. Well, thanks everyone for coming out on this beautiful day. Go enjoy the rest of the day. Unless tonight, so I'm going to be at the Tivoli Theater at Nelson Atkins. There's going to be a screening of a documentary about the renewables and data centers, all this kind of stuff. So that conversation will continue, and I'm hoping to learn more because I thought, why do you want me to be on this panel? And he's like, we want like legislators who are kind of lay on people on this issue and trying to get more information out. So it's like an hour-long documentary at 7, and then there's a little panel afterwards. So come on out if you want some more information on how we can problem solve on those tough issues. And thanks for being here, Jared.
Thank you.